So we've covered so much, but we're not quite finished. We have got a brilliant lightning talk coming up from now from Samantha Jury-Dada from Inner Circle Consulting. Sam grew up in a North London council estate. She served as a Southwark councillor, and she was telling me about this earlier. She was only 20 when she was elected as a councillor. She's led work on domestic abuse response. She travelled to the United States on a Churchill Fellowship to understand the lives of young girls connected to gangs. And she now brings all of that energy and passion and commitment to public service to her work with Inner Circle Consulting. Sam's going to make the case that systems change is where the real opportunity lies. So please welcome Sam Jury-Dada to the stage.
Well, hello everyone, thank you so much for having me. So I started my career working in the charity sector, specifically working with and for victims of domestic abuse. It was intense, it was rewarding, but it was also incredibly challenging. And I worked in that sector because, like many people, I was personally affected by the issue. And I really wanted to turn that experience, that vulnerability, into a force for something bigger. And I wanted to be at the forefront of leading the change. Now, back then, I was a young woman. I still am. I was a young woman. I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, fresh from university, and I really believed that I had the power to change things. Now, just 10 years on, if I'm honest, I have to remind myself that I still have that power, because that confidence and that belief doesn't come as easily. It doesn't come as easily because over time, that determination, that optimism, has been somewhat tempered by working in our broken system. A system that allows a victim of domestic abuse to be in the most perilous, the most life-threatening, the most dangerous situation before finally throwing adequate resources at a problem that it could have intervened in earlier for far less cost, both financial and human. A system where too often the answer is no, processes are opaque, and change is too slow. Yet, here I am, 10 years on, still wanting to do the work. Because like most people in this room, I want to make a difference. We are people that can't really imagine doing work without a social purpose, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging. But let's be honest, we're still working in sectors, in systems, on problems that are never underpinned by functioning, productive process. And toiling under these conditions, it can be so easy to forget the power that we have. Now, when I sat down to write this talk, I was thinking about the kind of power that we each individually have to make a difference. And the same person just kept on coming into my mind, which is my lovely granddad. And because my granddad was a bit like us. He worked in public service, he dedicated his career to designing social housing across London. And he was really intentional about how he approached his work. He thought about the parents that were trying to wrestle a buggy through the front door. He thought about how we can design homes where a wheelchair user could enter their houses with dignity. At the time, that was innovative. It was work that changed lives, and it's work that also won awards. Now, towards the end of his life, sadly, my granddad developed Alzheimer's. So the people that filled his life disappeared. The memories, the holidays, the celebrations, they all faded away. But one thing remained constant. He remembered his work. He remembered his work with baffling specificity. From trying to source a certain type of roof tile for a North London estate, through to the kind of challenges of thinking about what kind of brick he should use in another, through to the tussles with planning, with building control, and with finance, as his kind of dreams around how people should live were met with the realities of a council budget, even then. Now, the pride in his work, the sense of meaning, and the impact, that is what he remembered at the end. And it makes me think, what am I going to remember about my time at work, and what will we all remember? Because frontline work is always memorable. It's fast moving, there's risk, you often have people directly in front of you in need. And so you can see the impact of your work directly on their faces. Those human stories, they stay with you. But here's the thing, I'm doing some of my best work now on systems. Now, this work doesn't come with the fanfare, the ceremony, or the adrenaline of the front line, but I know that every day I am contributing towards making those conditions for that frontline work to be the best it possibly can. Because not every story of prevention is loud or compelling enough to make it to print. Sometimes that intervention is small and it's invisible to everyone except for that one person whose life just got a little bit steadier, a little bit safer, and a little bit more hopeful. And yet, it's those important shifts that system change is supposed to be producing. Now, we're at the turning point in the delivery of public services in this country. For too long, frontline delivery has been pulled towards crisis, encouraged to respond only at the last minute in the mistaken belief that this is somehow a better use of funding than early intervention. But here's the good news, because there is a unique moment of change right in front of us. Because we have new regional government, we have a devolution agenda, and we do have local government reorganisation. So although that broader political picture may look a bit uncertain, if not a bit chaotic at a national level, at a local level, it's these things that give us the opportunities to redesign the work that we're doing, who we're doing it with, and who we're doing it for. And they really do, because how often are we given the opportunities to build institutions that don't only manage demand, but also shape conditions for better lives? And this is at the heart of the work that I'm doing, which I call values-based change. Because to achieve permanent, sustainable system change, we should start first with our shared values, not focus straight away on structures. Values as a design principle, values charting how power flows through a system. This is how we can start to redesign government in each moment that we're given by embedding three vital values. Firstly, prevention is better than cure. Secondly, local people understand their needs better than Whitehall. And thirdly, we trust people. In this way, we have the power to change government for the better, to invest in communities and design new ways of doing things. Because it's not about one program or one shiny pilot, it is about a movement for change. And in my day job at ICC, we are right in the thick of this. So we work with organizations who are working in systems where funding is tight, demand is high, but most importantly, trust is fragile. And what we are seeing time and time again is that the areas that are making the most progress are not seeking small incremental change. They're doing the unglamorous work of shifting the system, leading change through shared values. So if I think about my roots working in domestic abuse, what do these system shifts look like in reality? Well, firstly, we'd be moving away from statutory or minimum viable funding to proper, appropriate funding for prevention services that allow a diversity of organisations, both in terms of scale and purpose, to deliver holistic interventions in communities with communities. Secondly, we will be regularly convening partners around the issue. And I'm not talking about the kind of stuffy social care meetings that happen because they have to happen. I'm talking about dynamic, problem-solving spaces that bring in place shapers, communities, investors, even industry. And I'd also make sure that in those spaces, those smaller organizations doing that hard work in communities not only have a voice at the table, but they are listened to at a strategic level. But most importantly, I would make sure that success is defined by victims and survivors themselves, the very people the system is intending to serve. So for this moment of government redesign to be a success, it requires an intentionality. It requires a new type of relationship with communities, so that new regional government doesn't just become Whitehall, but in the regions. Because it's not a technical exercise. It is a rare chance for us to redesign the local state around prevention and trust. Because if we end this moment with fewer, bigger organizations doing the same old thing, we have failed. Now, my granddad was very intentional about how he approached his work. He designed houses that fit real people, even when that was hard, even when that wasn't the norm. And I really want us to look back at this period of system change and be proud of what we were able to achieve, proud of our intentionality, proud of our inclusion of communities in the redesign of the state. So let's build a system that is easier to access, more joined up, more human, and meets people earlier. Because then we'll be doing work that is memorable and work that we can all be proud of. And we won't forget our power.